Hello chess friends and welcome to your Art of Chess channel and welcome to an amazing game of the chess.com Speed Chess Championship in 2022. We have here Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus Magnus Carlsen in a beautiful martial attack of the Ruy Lopez. And the martial attack is such a beautiful opening. I really love to see this sharp double-edged opening line in the Ruy Lopez theory, because the Ruy Lopez itself, I think, can be really sometimes a two-positional battle, a two-positional struggle. But when you play the martial attack, then of course the game explodes. We can expect really some wild tactical opportunities. So let's check out now the game, and then at the end of the video I'm going to reveal you the results of the semifinals between MVL and Magnus, and then we'll see also who play in the super final of this beautiful chess event. So let's check out now the game. E4 was the first move by MVL. We have E5 by Magnus, knight to F3, knight to C6, bishop to B5, the Spanish game after move A6. We have now the Murphy defense, bishop to A4, and now knight to F6, of course, hits the pawn in the center of the board. MVL goes castling, of course, prepares if you pick up the pawn here on E4 to open up the E file. So that's why Magnus goes first of all into the closed Ruy Lopez with the move bishop to E7, and now after move rook to E1, Magnus goes B5, hits the bishop. After bishop to B3, Magnus secures the king here by castling. And now MVL goes into this very aggressive line with the move C3 and prepares, of course, this very important move D4 in the center of the board. And you see now, okay, there is a good story about this move C3. It is, of course, as we said, preparing the move D4, but it takes also a very important square for the knight. It takes away the natural square for the knight. The knight would have, of course, will jump here on C3 and would further control the D5 square. So that's why Magnus has now basically two choices. You can go into this positional lines with the move D6. You can then afterwards play some ideas of rook to E8, bishop to G4. You can play, of course, maybe later rook to B8, maybe A5, B4, similar stuff. So you have many opportunities. But Magnus goes now into the most aggressive line, goes now into the martial attack with the move D5, and I really love this opening because it gives such a beautiful opportunity to also for black to win the game. That's, I think, the beautiful part about this attack. It's nothing wrong here for white. I'm not saying white is losing the game because you pull off the martial attack, but I think it's sort of an open line that I think has to be considered more and more often, especially with the development of top engines. Then I think you can search for more tactical opportunities, really some wild tactical ideas. And I think in the near future on my YouTube chess channel we'll do probably a mini series about the martial attack, especially with the black pieces, because I think we want to have something here from black perspective, at least some kind of an open line prepared against E4. So now Magnus goes with the move D5. So we have now E takes D5, knight to D5, and you see now after move knight takes E5, knight takes E5, and rook to E5. Okay, white grabbed the pawn, but the downside for white a little bit is of course that first of all, the first thing that we have to consider here is that the rook is exposed on E5. So the rook will not stay there forever, will get probably an extra tempo against the rook. And also what the downside is, look at the queen side. The knight on B1 is still on the starting square. As we said, the pawn on C3 took away the natural square for the knight on C3. The bishop on C1 is stuck. The rook on A1 is not playing. The queen is on the starting square. You have some issues, as I said, with the rook. So you need 3, 4, maybe even 5, 6 moves in order to regroup, in order to get your pieces back into the shape. So meanwhile, black is doing something. Look at this. The bishop's activity of black is perfectly fine. The bishop on E7 is controlling both of these diagonals. The bishop on B7 will come. You probably get attacked by the rook on E8, move on the E file. So black is getting really beautiful piece activity for the lost pawn. That's what I really like about the martial attack here for black. So in the continuation, after move rook to E5, we have bishop to B7, protecting now the knight on D5. Here MVL goes queen to F3, hits now the knight 3 times, and Magnus goes into a beautiful line. That's now must-know theory. Bishop to D6 is here really the correct move, because after bishop to D5, Magnus goes C6, and there is simply no time now to pick up now the pawn on C6, because you get bishop to C6 after queen to C6. Look at this. And pick up the rook on E5, and of course here black is up the exchange. Okay, white has some kind of a compensation, has a minor piece and 2 pawns for the rook, but As I said, the lack of development is simply something that bothers White. White needs to play too many moves in order to get the pieces into the game. You have several problems here on the first rank. You can get even checkmated, so that's why it's not a good line here for White. So that's why after move c6, we have here rook to e2 by MVL. We have now c takes d5, and now finally d4. Here White is really searching to get some breathing spaces to get finally the pieces into the game, but Magnus goes aggressively with the move rook to e8. He's saying, you never played with your rook, you never connected your pieces on the first rank. Now I will attack your first rank, because the lack of development is something that bothers, as we said, now White in the continuation of the game. So knight to d2, we have now a5. Magnus continues now the pressure here on the queen side. Rook to e8, queen takes e8, and now after move knight to f1, MVL found at least some kind of way to get the pieces into the game, and he's trying now some ideas of knight to e3 to maybe lock the e file to somehow get out of this tactical mess. But now Magnus goes with a beautiful move, queen to e1. Here he's paralyzing basically the whole queen side with just one move by the queen. In the continuation now b3, MVL is searching for opportunities to play the move bishop to b2. We have now rook to e8, we have bishop to b2, and now after move queen to e2, queen takes e2, rook takes e2, still the bishop is hanging. And see now again, White has a tough time to get the pieces into the game. Bishop to a3 is of course not a possibility, so you have to step back now with the bishop, or you have to protect now the bishop with the rook. The better, I think, idea is simply to go bishop to c1. I think MVL has to play now this particular line, which forces maybe a drawish thing with rook to e1 and then bishop to b2, rook to e2, bishop to c1. Maybe this was the way to go. Of course, Magnus doesn't have to play rook to e1 immediately. He can still play b4 ideas, and I think still black is pretty fine here in this particular position. But rook to b1, I think, leads now into complications for MVL, because Magnus plays now again this move b4, and after c takes b4, a takes b4, we can notice one particular thing about this position. Okay, black is down a pawn, but I like always here to notice that actually this pawn on b4 is holding two pawns, so it's not really a position where black is having one pawn down, because one pawn is really paralyzing now the whole queen side. The rook is paralyzing many pieces of white here. The bishop will come into the game, so in my opinion a much better position here already for Magnus Carlsen. So knight to g3 played by MVL, and now Magnus goes into a wild line with the move bishop to g3. Maybe this was unnecessary. I'm not sure. Really, I think we have to now let the engine work here. Bishop to g3 seemed to me like a strange idea. Maybe a slightly better idea is to play rook to c2, controlling again further the pieces, and I think keeping the bishop pair would be much better. Okay, as I said, Magnus went into this line, bishop to g3, nothing wrong with this line, because still this rook is actually paralyzing many pieces of white. So after h takes g3, we have now bishop to c8. Magnus is now trying to hit the rook and of course deflect it from the defense of the bishop on b2, so that's why MVL goes king to f1. Magnus goes now bishop to a6, threatens some discoveries with rook takes b2, and of course it's cover check against the king, so that's why the king has to step back. And now after move h5, we have bishop to c1, bishop to d3. Again the rook has to step back on the starting square. Look how, as I said, Magnus is really paralyzing white's pieces. White never got the opportunity to get with the pieces back into the game, and now Magnus goes with rook to e1. The king has to step back, and now here Magnus goes with the aggressive move g5. He's of course not allowing here this pawn to be taken, because here the problem is of course the tension on the first rank. So in the continuation we have now bishop to b2. MVL is again searching for simplifications by trading off some more pieces. Magnus goes rook to e2, we have bishop to c1, and now Magnus goes bishop to rook takes f2. Maybe here also f6 would control further the position, because I think we can keep the pieces glued together like this. Probably bishop to e3 would happen, but still we're controlling now really this first rank. We can play some ideas of rook to b2, and I think black is also pretty fine. But as I said, this pawn on b4 is holding again these two pawns, and is holding also the rook. So it's really tough for white to get the pieces into the game. So in the continuation, as we said, after move bishop to c1, Magnus goes rook takes f2, MVL picks up now the pawn on g5, but now Magnus goes with this idea, bishop to e4, hits of course here the weak pawn on g2. So here MVL goes bishop to e7, attacks of course the beautiful pawn here on b4. Magnus goes now bishop to g2, king to g1, rook to b2, and now after bishop to b4, MVL, I think, got out of this tactical mess. He has now two connected pass pawns here, which is, I think, something that we should not forget about it, because now if white plays the game correctly, I think this could be really beautiful position. Just launch the attack and hope for the best. Of course, Magnus has some opportunities with bishop to e4, rook to g2 and similar stuff, and of course black king can go very active into the game. But in my opinion, if white really plays now the game correctly, then something there's for sure here for MVL. So in the continuation, we have now bishop to e4 by Magnus. We have bishop to d6, rook to g2, king to f1, rook to h2, threatening of course a check and also to pick up here to pick up the rook. So that's why rook to e1, and now Magnus picks up a very important pawn. You have to now pick up at least one of these two connected pass pawns. You cannot tolerate them. Still, it's an equal game, but again, we have to say black has a slightly better position because of the piece activity. The bishop is centralized, the rook is controlling the second rank, and now, as we said, black has a clear path to get the king somehow into the game. Rook to e3, we have king to g7, rook to c3. Magnus goes, of course, now with the king, and now the crucial mistake here by MVL was now the move king to e1. This is huge blunder. A better idea is to you have to play with your bishop. You have to step back. You have to get out of this attack, because after king to e1, notice that the pawn is connected to the bishop on f4, and now Magnus deflects the pawn. If you pick up, of course, the pawn, you lose the piece. That's the problem about the bishop. The pawn is overloaded now to the defense of the bishop. In the continuation, we have now bishop to e5, but now Magnus creates a very important passer, and basically this is almost game over. We'll simply push the pawn somehow further. Notice that this square is on a light square, which is of course supported by the bishop, so this is simply a bad position now for MVL. So he goes g4. He's trying desperately now to get some pieces into the game, but of course Magnus picks up simply the pawn. We have now a check, doesn't matter, king to h4. Now MVL goes behind, but nothing spectacular, because Magnus can always cover himself on the h file, so no perpetual checks are possible, and as I said, in one moment we'll just push the pawns and the game should be over. So king to rook to h8, we have king to g4, b4, here we have rook to b2, bishop to d6. Now Magnus controls further here. The pawn is trying now to get with the king closer, and he's even threatening some checkmates here on the first rank. We have rook to h6, king to f3, and after rook to h5 and bishop to g4, rook to h7 was now MVL's movement here after king to e3. In this position, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave resigned. So there's nothing that can be done. Whatever you do, you can just prolong the game. You can maybe sacrifice the bishop on f4 just in order to prolong the game for a little bit, because there is nothing that can be done against this annoying check on b1, and the game is over. So really great game here by Magnus Carlsen. I really loved his choice, his opening choice, the martial attack in the Ruy Lopez. If you want to study something against e4, I think the martial attack is really a beautiful opening. You can have, I think, a decent game, a decent attacking game, sort of an attacking flow. This is a perfect opening for an attacker, and I think it's really worth the study. There are many games in the database. Vachier, for instance, played this opening also very often with great success. I really loved also Vachier's games in the martial attack, so check it out and you'll not, I think, regret it. So okay, when it comes to this semi-final stage, we have to say Magnus really outplayed again MVL with the clear results, 17 points against 9 points for MVL. Really great performance again by Magnus. He destroyed Fabiano in the quarterfinal stage. He destroyed now MVL in the semi-final stage, and will face now Hikaru Nakamura in the super final of the chess.com Speed Chess Championship. Incredible. This will be an epic battle again. I think there is 5 years ago an epic match between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen, also from the chess.com Speed Chess Championship. I think it's one of the most viewed most viewed chess battles of all times. It has, I think, about 3 million views or something. Really, really immortal battle it was between Hikaru and Magnus. I think we'll see again an epic battle, so be prepared. This will be again chess from another dimension. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this martial attack. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more about the Rui Lopez and some other openings, check out our mini Rui Lopez series. Here's the link of our playlist. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos on what to say. Chess is the best, of course.